Resident Evil Village was one of my favorite releases in 2021. Anyway, I realized that review was never done, and since 2021 was poor for great AAA games, this review should be on. So let's start. Having survived the events of Resident Evil 7, we find ourselves back in control of Ethan. Only now he has a family and the rest of his life to look forward to. That all changes, however, when serious veteran Chris Redfield arrives, killing Mia and causing Ethan's whole world to turn upside down. With Ethan now devastated, heartbroken and furious of the actions of his former several, he sets out on a quest for revenge, determined to find out why Chris did this to him. Since entering the events of Resident Evil 7, Ethan is a lot more resilient and combat capable. While you shouldn't go into this thinking Ethan 2 is now ready to punch boulders, the events of Resident Evil 8 pushes our unlikely hero to his absolute limits in this freshly twisted nightmare of an adventure. Keeping in line with all of our reviews here, I won't go into too much detail on a plot, but without spoilers there are plenty of twists and turns throughout Capcom's latest. While you won't be seeing more of the mainline chapters here, this is once again primarily Ethan's adventure, and a journey in which he has not only the newly infected to deal with, but also his own personal demons too. Resident Evil 8 is an interesting game as it takes elements of Resident Evil 7 and combines those with the ideas of a remote Eastern European village from Resident Evil 4. This is then included into a semi-open world map where, in true Resident Evil fashion, you have to familiarize yourself with your surroundings, unlock shortcuts and find the necessary keys and puzzle solutions to progress. While Village isn't too heavy on the survival mechanics, you'll still need resources to progress. Undoubtedly you'll want to collect all of the scrap metal, ammunition and treasure you can find. Worth noting, I usually play everything on hard difficulty, but with Village I wanted to experience the game as I'd imagine the majority of players would their first time through on standard difficulty. Now let me just say that the standard difficulty is still relatively scarce on the resource front, and a bad encounter will likely leave you empty out most of your inventory. You want to be extra careful when it comes to using your healing items, favorite guns and explosives. Of course, having so many notes to the outstanding Resident Evil 4, it wouldn't be right to exclude a mysterious, shady and hard to gauge merchant around to buy, sell and provide helpful information to you. This time around here we're graced with the weirdly lovable Duke, a morbidly obese man with a smug and all-knowing demeanor. He never seems to leave his merchant cart, and yet he's almost always where you need him the most. Resident Evil 8 really rewards you for taking the time to explore, and you'll want to do this at every given opportunity. Not just for the resources you'll find, but also because treasure and jewelry are your main sources of income. The inventory sorting system of Resident Evil 4 also makes a return, and all inventory space upgrades are done via the Duke. Needless to say, he is essential to your success and one of the main chapters you will be familiarizing yourself with. Does he have the charm of the merchant from Resident Evil 4? Sadly not, but Resident Evil 4's merchant isn't forgotten about, and one moment in particular made by the Duke definitely brought a smile to my face. One thing I should mention is that while Resident Evil 8 will 100% scare some of you out there, for me the series doesn't induce fear, but more suspense. That said, there is a fine blend of action and horror here. While Village takes a lot of inspiration from Resident Evil 4, this time around things are a lot more grounded, mature and serious in tone. There's almost no trace of the camp moments of Resident Evil 4, as fights are now crazy, over the top and full on cinematic spectacles. Adding to the tension, you'll often find yourself low on resources, even after conserving them, and when the next encounter does eventually come along and catch you off guard, because believe me it will, you'll better have a decent amount of ammo left for your favorite weapon. If not, you'll have to adapt to the situation, using whatever you have to hand. My personal favorites were the tactical shotgun and sniper rifle. Gameplay changes such as camera filters and the Resident Evil 7 tape recorder save points can be turned on or off from the main menu, though I didn't find a way to switch which weapon the weapon charms were attached to. During my 11-hour run through the campaign, I couldn't help but stop to take in the surrounding visuals. Whether admiring your surroundings, the seductively twisted vampire sister, the internet's favorite 9-feet Lady Dimitrescu, the monstrous character transformations, or even the weapon effects, Resident Evil 8 is an outstandingly beautiful game to look at. Given how polished everything feels, it's clear to me that a lot of love, sweat, tears and determination went into the development of the game. With so many standout and unique buildings, you'll also find navigation in the map an absolute breeze. This is especially evident when you start unlocking the many shortcuts within the game. If for some reason you struggle a little to gather your bearings, the area map does a pretty good job of showing you where you are and where you need to go. My only issue with this is once you reach a certain part in the game, you're no longer able to go back to Castle Dimitrescu. By the time I was given a treasure map, it was sadly too late to go back into the castle to grab what I've missed. Still, that's something to grab on a second playthrough. That said, there is actually a good amount of reasons to replay the game. If you're like me and love to grab all trophies, achievements for your favorite titles, there are a ton of challenges you may have missed during your first run. These include killing a certain number of enemies within the time limit, killing specific enemies during your first encounter with them, and so much more. All of these are accessible within the title menu. Without spoilers, when firing a very specific heavy machine gun, both the haptic feedback and adaptive triggers worked in tandem to recreate what I can only describe as the feeling you get from recoiling guns at the arcades. In the grand scheme of things, while this isn't a must-have feature, it definitely added to the experience and made an already impressively cinematic fight that much more enjoyable, aiding in delivering one of my most entertaining experiences yet. Overall, there is certainly a lot to love in Capcom's latest Resident Evil title, and while it's not perfect, it does a fantastic job at pulling you into the unknown with its mysterious plot, creepy gothic setting and chaotic environments. The game boasts a deeply satisfying chapter, creature design and melancholic sound design. There is a lot to be said about a game that has this much quality content, and while it would have been nice to have had a slightly longer campaign to play through, the pacing is good for the most part. Once you reach the inevitable end, Resident Evil 8 is just about the right length, bringing together the best parts this franchise has to offer into one cohesive, neat little package. I cannot wait to see what Capcom have in store for us next.